Hey, Phil.
Hey, Senda.
You want to keep talking about
Co-GMing.
Yeah, isn't this the same bit as last week?
I mean, yeah, but like I copied last week's notes to start making this week's notes. Cue music. And welcome to Panda's Talking Games. I'm one of your co-hosts, Phil. See what I did there?
And I'm your other co-host, Senda. The funny part about that is that you're really proud of yourself, but you did it last week too.
I wanted to make it sound fresh. I'm going to do an announcement real quick.
Okay.
Hey, listener, you must like podcasts because you're listening to one right now. What about audiobooks? Do you like audiobooks? I bet you do. Did you know that you can get Never Unprepared, the complete Game Master's Guide to Session Prep, written by me at audible.com? Well, you can. So if you like audiobooks, and I think you do, and if you like jamming advice, I'm pretty sure you do if you're listening to the show, go check it out. Check out the link in the show notes, audible.com, Never Unprepared audiobook.
So for tonight's topic, we're going to continue our discussion about co-GMing. And specifically, we are talking about concurrent co-GMing, where two GMs are running one single session simultaneously or back and forth. Mm-hmm. Right? Good. So last episode, we started our negotiation about how we're going to tackle this, but we didn't quite get all the way through it. So, Phil, what are the things that we are negotiating?
Yep. So by way of recap, in order to make our co-GMing work, we were going to look at power dynamic, workload, handoff, and what games we might do this with. So last episode, we dove into power dynamic. So talking about how the GMing relationship between the two of us would work, because we have two people co-GMing. Are we going to be equals? Do we want a lead support structure? That kind of thing. So we had a lot of good talks about that, and we came to the following conclusions. That outside of the game, so when we're prepping the game, or we're talking about if we're running this multiple times, if we're talking about it between sessions, that kind of thing, we are two equals, right? Just doing our thing, discussing what's going on and making suggestions and doing design and things like that, right? Mm-hmm. And I think it's good to say that right now we're talking about this concurrent GMing in the space of convention one-shots, because yes. I think that's where we think right now, well, one, walk before you run, right? Like, why dive into a campaign until we can make sure that we can actually do this for a one-shot?
Right.
But two, I think we both said last week that we think it will work better if we are in the same space. And since 90% of the time we're in the same space when we are at conventions, yep. That this would be a good way to do that. Okay, yes. So outside of the game, outside of the actual play of the game, we are equals, and we are both contributing equally. And if we get stuck and, there's no tiebreaker, right? If we get stuck, we'll work it out.
Yeah, we'll just figure it out because we have all the time in the world to just,
to come back around on it. Yeah.
Yep.
That kind of thing.
Yep.
Which is pretty much how we design games, right? Like
yes. It's also very comfortable because that is how we design games.
Right. We design games, we make podcasts. Like, we're very comfortable in that space, which is, I think, why we didn't really spend too much time on it.
Right.
Okay. During the game, we decided we would go with a lead support dynamic, where I would be the lead, which would be I'd be like the lead GM, kind of taking the game and getting it started and moving it along. And you would be the support GM who would kind of fill in things. And we're going to talk about this as we get into workload, right? Like, what are the things?
Yep.
But really what our lead support structure dynamic crystallized for us was that if at any point in the game we reach an impasse,
yes,
that I will just make a decision.
Yes, you are the tiebreaker.
Right. So if I want to pick this choice and you want to pick that choice, and we're suddenly stuck, like, neither one of us is like, your choice, whatever, then like I'll just pick one.
Yes.
Whether I pick my original choice, your choice, or some other choice, right? Like, I'll just be the one who gets us unstuck.
Yes.
And I think that's really important, right? When we're talking about co-GMing, again, when we talk about GMing, right, we never want dead air. And we certainly don't want dead air because the two of us are trying to make a decision about something.
Right. And the thing is, usually when you're running a game by yourself, you're still trying to avoid dead air. But when you're trying to make a decision about something, you're running it through your head really fast because you're just thinking about it really quickly. And co-GMing, you have to run it through your head really fast. And then you also have to speak aloud words to your co-GM because they don't know what's in your head, right?
Yeah.
None of us are mind readers. And that is actually what makes this, I think, very tricky. Yep. So you have to be able to communicate very quickly and then come very quickly to a decision. And that is why we wanted to implement the lead support structure so that there was a quick way that we've already pre-negotiated and agreed upon to like basically break ties without having dead air, right?
Yeah, I agree. Cool. All right, so that was power dynamic.
Yeah.
That leaves workload, handoff, and games. And since we're recording this, and most of this is unscripted with us just talking about it, I don't know if we'll get to all three of these in one episode. We might, we might not. Our listeners will know by the time they get to the end of this episode whether or not there's
whether
a
or
third
not we
one.
did.
At this point, we don't know. So,
The mystery.
So we're going to talk about workload, handoff, and games. We're going to talk about them as much as we need to talk about them, which is why I'm hinting that there may or may not be a third episode. So we may go through this quickly or not. Okay, cool. Let's talk about workload because I can think of a number of things. First of all, there's like narration.
Right. Well, can I back us up a step?
Yeah, go ahead.
Do you want to talk about workload in the game or do you want to talk about workload outside of the game?
We need to actually do both.
Right. So we might start with outside the game because I actually think that one's going to be a little bit more cut and dried for us.
Sure. All right, let's do that one really quick.
Yeah.
So outside of the game, workload outside the game is primarily session prep.
Yeah. So some of that is like idea generation and we're going to do that together.
Yeah, absolutely.
So that's fine. And then some of that is like creation of outlines, notes, etc.
Yeah,
which
that's
is probably going to be you.
Yeah.
That's why I was like, we can do the outside stuff. It's pretty straightforward.
And I think we talked a little bit about this last week as well, right? So
we did. Yeah.
So for sure, I'm going to probably be the one who's going to write our session notes because that's a thing I do normally anyway, and it's a thing you don't normally do when you run games.
No, I really don't write a lot of notes when I run games. So,
and I don't write a ton of notes, but I write notes.
Yeah.
So there'll be that, and then the other part, which I think is something we can split, will probably just be prepping character sheets or printing stuff out or stuff like that, right? Like
all of that stuff is easy to.
We'll divide and conquer on that.
Yeah. Yep. And if we want to do pre-gens, etc., blah blah blah.
Yep, absolutely.
Yeah.
And either one of us can register the game.
Right.
I mean, I may do it just because it'll be like if I'm going to be the lead GM, then maybe it's under my name. But I don't, most gaming systems don't account for 2 GMs.
Yeah, they do not. That's true facts.
People are going to wind up signing up for this game and wind up getting a surprise.
Yeah. Well, we can put it in the description.
Yes, we can. Co-GM starring Senda. Yeah.
I know, Senda, it's like Madonna.
Yes. Cool. All right.
There is only one.
So out of the game, piece of cake.
Easy peasy.
Good. All right.
I just thought we should touch on it quickly.
Yep. In game. All right. So in game, we have a lot of things going on. I guess the first one, probably the most obvious. No, you know what? We'll do it. I want to talk about a couple of them. I'm just thinking, I want to think through linearly. So like starting to run a game, like sitting down to a table full of people. Obviously, we introduce ourselves. The next part is I imagine that a good workload break during the introduction of the game would be that if I did the basic introduction of the game, like this is the setting, this is the situation, right? Like these are the important mechanics of the game, and maybe you did the safety part.
Yep.
Are you comfortable with that?
Yeah. What's interesting about talking about this is like for the parts of this that we like know how we're going to split up some of that workload stuff, we might almost have like an outline thing in front of us.
You're so funny. Have you never seen my con notes, convention notes for Hydra hackers?
I have actually run games from your con notes, so
right.
I feel like this ask is just already in your wheelhouse.
Yeah, so for people who haven't seen my con notes, my session notes when I run stuff at home is just like a bulleted outline in OneNote, which is fine. I love OneNote for that. When I write sessions for conventions, I put a few extra pages in my OneNote tab, and I have, like for Hydra hackers, I have a really standard way to introduce the game because I use the same page. And it's bulleted, like it's all bulleted. But what it does is it makes sure that I cover all the things I need to cover. So it talks about like the water authority and whatever. And then like we make characters, and then it talks about any special rules we need to cover, and then like safety and whatever. So yes, the answer is one, we will have notes. We will have notes about how we're going to intro the game, and we'll collaborate on that, right? We'll talk about what things do I need to make sure get in the notes and like that. But when it comes to the speaky parts, and this is actually a thing I think we can rely on, and this will get a little into handoff too, which I'm okay if these blend a little.
Yeah, they inevitably will.
We can, for the introduction, in case the introduction's like kind of long. Yeah. Is we can do color coding like we do with our show notes.
Oh, yeah.
And hand that back and forth.
Yeah, and some of how we manage that is going to be based on our game choice.
Yeah, some of it'll be game choice, and some of it'll just be like when I write up the situation, like I kind of know now, like when I look at a bulleted list, like I kind of know because this is, our show notes are bulleted lists, right? So if I start looking at the bulleted list and I'm like, that's a lot of bullets, then I'll just start color coding it.
Yeah, I know what color my color is.
Yeah, exactly, right? So
we're going to run games like podcasts.
Well, I mean, listen, this is a thing we're actually really good at, is handing off a conversation back and forth to each other.
Yeah, yeah.
Okay, so introduction will be, I'll start it, but it could hand off back and forth. Yep. And you're okay being like safety czar?
Safety. Yes.
Okay, I want to be clear. I want to be clear because it's stuck in my head, and I don't want it to come off that way. I am also totally fine doing the safety part of the game.
In the same way that I am also totally fine doing the intro part, but for the sake of us just agreeing on this and arranging, I'm...
Right, and the fact that one of the things we do want in the game, we don't want you sitting there and me just talking.
Yes.
Right. We want it to go back and forth. So we do want to actually hand chunks off, but I don't want people to think like, well, you're the girl, so you do the safety part. Like I do the safety part in all my games. Like it's like,
and in terms of actual safety monitoring, that is something that we share equally in the game.
We share it. The players share it.
Shares it. I mean, it's a thing that we're all on board with together, but to be very clear about it.
Yeah, so to be very clear, as I'm writing up the intro and color coding things, like I will do the primary discussion of the settings situation. You will do the primary discussion of safety, and then you'll be the other voice in the introduction. I will be the other voice in the safety. Yeah, right. Yeah. So that we keep it. That is exactly how our show notes work.
Yes, it is.
If longtime listeners, if you pay attention carefully, then Senda does her part of the like campaign part. The examples are often done by me. Yeah. And then it switches. That's very on purpose. Right.
Except
that's very purposeful.
Sometimes we ignore the colors and just march on through anyway.
Get excited. If I get excited, just blow, like we start blowing through colors. All right.
We're like, oh, that's red. That's whoops.
Yeah, whoops. Oh, just keep going. Like
whatever.
Yeah. So that happens a lot. Okay, cool. All right. So that gets us through the introduction.
Here's the interesting thing to me. That part of running a game is much easier for us to talk about splitting up because it is the kind of thing that we can plan out in advance.
Oh, yeah, totally.
From here, it gets interesting, doesn't it?
A little bit more. We have character gen.
That's true.
Character gen, I think, can easily be a shared thing where we could kind of just, color code like I'll get everybody through stats and skills, you'll get everybody through whatever. Or if it's pre-gens, we'll hand off back and forth introducing the pre-gen characters or whatever. Like, if it's Ditch Lilies, then, it's like, okay, this is Lily. And then you're like, this is Ashley. But if we're making characters at the table, then maybe it's, more like, okay, I'll do the top part of the character sheet. You'll do, attributes, whatever.
Yeah. Yep. Agree. Okay. Or maybe it's like the two things we left blank.
Yeah. Exactly.
Pre-gens. Yeah.
Yeah. And if it's that, maybe one person introduces the pre-gens and then somebody does the bit for customizing.
Yeah.
Again, these are all things like you just said.
Depends on the game.
Yeah, but these are also things that are very known quantities. Like, we'll know this before we get into the game. We'll know it
going in, yes.
Okay. So, next up, primary narration, right? Lead narration.
This is where I would say lead narration. This is where it's going to get more interesting because we aren't going to know once you actually start talking how that's going to...
And this has everything to do with our handoff. So yes. I think the thing that we can say workload-wise is that we are planning to share narration.
Yes.
I think, and this is, I think, what we talked a little bit about last week, part of my job will be to move the story forward.
Yeah.
Like, I will move us into switching scenes, closing out scenes, changing camera, like spotlight from one player to another.
Yeah.
But in terms of description or embellishing each other's description, like, I assume you'll be right there.
I would hope so. Otherwise, I'd be real bored.
Yeah, no. I mean, I think this is really like this is the crux of.
I think this is not only the crux of what we have to figure out. I think this is also the crux of what makes co-GMing difficult, right? And it is both the workload in terms of the workload at the table for narration and stuff. It is also the handoff, and the handoff is key. And I'm finding like it's a little bit tricky. I think that it's going to be to some extent, I think it's going to function a lot like how we pass conversation back and forth on the podcast. But it also takes some practice because both of us are very accustomed to at the table, if I am speaking, then I continue speaking until a player does something, right?
Yeah, so I think handoff wise, there are going to be a couple of obvious places where we can hand off. So one is NPCs.
Yeah.
So it's very easy to be like, I'm like describing stuff, and then you could take the NPC in the scene.
Yeah.
Right. So that's easy, or vice versa. You're describing, and here's a cool way. I'm going to pause for a second and say this clearer.
Yeah.
Thinking about the Ditch Lilies game that we ran at Metatopia.
Yeah.
The scene in Big Mugs, the coffee shop, with the Bradista.
Yes, the Bradista.
Right? So I think that when we come up on an NPC, and some of this will be spontaneous because sometimes NPCs will get created spontaneously, and sometimes it won't be because sometimes NPCs will be part of a game.
Yeah.
I think when an NPC comes into play, that is a handoff point where we should decide who's going to play that NPC. And I want to talk a little bit more about handoffs, which I think is going to wind up being next week, because there's going to need to be some ways to signal each other.
Yeah.
But what I'm imagining is, like, for instance, the Bradista was very easy for me to play because he was like, very much a dude.
Yeah.
Right? A 90s dude, and I was a 90s dude.
Yeah.
Right? So, like, I would kind of want to signal you, like, when that NPC came up to be like,
that one's me. I got this one.
Right. But then, like, the waitress at the librarian, like, I don't know. I want to be very clear. I don't want us to split NPCs along gender lines.
Yeah.
Like, that's not a thing. Like, I don't want cases where it's like, well, that's a girl NPC, so that's your NPC, right? Like,
I would be tempted to say that the default might be that if an NPC is introduced that is being created, let me back up a step. So if we have NPCs that we have pre-planned, like as part of our prep, I think those we can just assign, like which one of us plays them whenever they come up, right?
Sure.
That's part of that pre-planning where it's easy because it's known quantities. I think that if NPCs come up in the game, I'm tempted to say that unless we specifically signal that we want to keep it, that it automatically would then go to the other person.
Who's not narrating.
Yeah.
I am very okay with that.
Because it then leaves you free to continue narrating with the other person doing the voicing, basically.
Exactly. Right.
Yeah.
I think that's it. All right. So I think you hit it on the head, right? So let me see if I heard you correctly.
Yeah.
And I'm going to use some examples.
Yeah.
So for instance, we once played a game of the Warren.
Yeah.
And one of the characters that was one of the NPCs that was established in the Warren was the cats.
Yeah.
Right. And that is definitely one where think I was better suited to play out the cat than you were.
I agree. Yeah.
By personality, right?
Yeah.
Just by personality, like the cat is very much in my wheelhouse.
Right.
And in fact, you actually helped me because when I was prepping that game, you actually
know.
helped me develop that NPC.
And then I got hit with it. And I was like,
Yes.
oh God, I remember this.
Right. So I think that you're absolutely right. So that when we're prepping a game, we can simply just put a name next to the NPC and be like, that's your NPC. This is my NPC.
Yeah.
Okay. And then, yes, I think that whoever is the narrator, and this is going to get to along the lines of what I think next week we're going to talk about, which is going to be somehow passing the stick.
Yes.
I think that whoever's the narrator, you're right. The support person, the not narrator is the NPCs.
Yes.
Regardless of gender or whatever else, because I was starting to do the Ditch Lily examples, and as I'm naming all the other NPCs, I'm like, wait, these are all women NPCs. I'm like, no, not that. like explicitly not that. We don't like that's like no. Okay, good. Yes, I agree completely. At any one time during the game, one of us is narrating the game. The other one is not, and the one who's not will
Takes NPCs. Yeah,
will take the NPCs unless of course they're already assigned,
predetermined. Yep.
Or we leave the option open that the person who is narrating is like, wait, no, I totally have this.
Let me take this one. I got it.
Yeah.
But that'll be the exception. The assumption is that the secondary narrator at that particular point would just jump in and take that NPC.
Yeah, that's really good. I like that.
Yeah.
Okay. I really like that. And I think that's what's going to really bring, as we get good at this, I think that's what's really going to make these games special is the idea that like, I'm framing and narrating the scene because I've got the narration position and like I introduce an NPC and boom, like you just jump, like you spring right in with dialogue. Like I don't even have to do the segue thing where I switch from narration to dialogue. Like you just whoosh, you're right in there with dialogue. And then I'm just kind of watching the scene or watching the table and then, starting to be like, I just turn to both of you and be like, cool. How is this? Like, how does this go? What happens next kind of thing.
Right. Or you can continue to push narrative things on like, there's a sound in the background of a siren.
Yeah, exactly.
Whatever it is like,
Yeah. I think that's where, when we talk about what people are going to remember from these games, it'll be this. It'll be the way that we switch narrator, and it'll be the way that we bring in NPCs.
And I think that it's especially powerful because it makes such a clean break between the narration and the actual dialogue.
Yeah,
right?
It changes voice, right?
It actually changes voice.
which is good because we know like changing voice is attention, generates attention.
Yes. Yeah. It's grabbing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
All right. So now let's talk about rules.
Sure.
So you already know where I'm going with this, and I already know where we're going with this. I think it's safe to say, right. I think it's safe to say that I will be responsible for knowing all the rules to the game.
Yeah, you should be the rules dude.
Yeah. Now, I'm by no means a rules lawyer, but I am a person who likes to play games as they are written because that's my thing, right? I like to play games as written because I like to try. I like to play them as the designer intended.
I do my best.
I've seen your games. You do not play games with the rules as written. It is okay. Like, you're not doing wrong, bad fun.
No, but we try. We try, and then eventually we do allow our fun to take us further away from the rules, right?
Right. So I think that, and we had this happen once during Digitaliz. In fact, it's the moment where we thought that Co-GMing might be a good idea. Right. Was I went to look up something in the rules, and rather than being dead air, you went from taking playtest notes to starting to narrate the game.
Well, I took over the Bradista.
Right. Right. And I went and looked up something.
Yeah.
So we kept the dead air away. Now, for a game that we know better, hopefully there won't be as much. But like sometimes, like in a Powered by the Apocalypse game, like sometimes there's that moment where you're trying to think like, which one of these things do I pick? Or which move do I take on a 6-? Mm-hmm. And it'll be helpful to have somebody
keeping things moving.
Yep.
Yeah,
so rules will be me.
Yep,
that's fine.
Rules is you. That's part of the reason that you end up being the lead when the game is actually going on, because a lot of tiebreaker stuff I think that we would actually run into would probably be rules related.
Yeah, I mean, I think, primary GM will, call for roles and stuff like that. When we get to handoff, we're going to talk about how to interrupt each other. Because there are going to be times where one of us is going to be like, I think that might need to be a role, or I think that needs not to be a role.
Let me actually back you up for a second, because if I am in the position of actually doing narration, I was actually assuming that I would also still call for roles during that narration.
Absolutely.
Right. Okay. We're saying the person who is currently narrating.
Yeah, I'm saying that sometimes there may be an exception where you're narrating, and because perhaps I know the rules better than you, I might be like, oh, that's a role.
That's a role. You should engage the mechanic. Yeah, that's fine. Yeah. Okay, cool.
That's all I'm saying is like there's also a thing where you may want to interrupt me and that's again when we get to handoffs, there's a thing where that we may want that to happen. Yeah. Which I think is fine, right? Like, I think that's a perfectly fine thing. All right, so we've talked about narration. We've talked about rules. What's your feels on combat? Like, is combat different from narration, or is combat just another form of narration and it's fine, we've already addressed it?
I kind of think combat is mostly another form of narration, but I think that it will also fall into the handoff a little bit, because sometimes you're like narrating, and then you're like, I'm starting to run out of juicy ways to talk about their sword flashing in the sunlight as they swipe it, so let me just tag you in, right?
Yeah, I'm totally cool with that, right? Like, so I guess the question is, depending on the game we play, because like in Powered by the Apocalypse games, there's no bad guy turn, right?
No.
Like in Powered by the Apocalypse games, the narrator just narrates and says what's going on. That we can switch back and forth with. We have narration. We have the ability to switch narrators. In games where characters might have
bad
hit points turns. And rolls and stuff.
Yeah, that's different. Because it is funny.
Would the support person be the opposition?
I mean, they could be. That would be interesting. I immediately answered from the perspective of Powered by the Apocalypse, which just tells you the kind of games that I've been running recently.
That's also the kind of games I've been running, and also, but I have I'm playing Forbidden Lands, and not that I think Forbidden Lands is the exact right fit for us, but we may encounter a game where NPCs have stats and rolls again, and then we would have to address in that game. And I think this is perfectly fine. I think we could have a narrator and then somebody playing the opposition, and it could be the kind, like whoever's more comfortable. Like you might be like, oh, I'll take over running the table.
Right. You
manage
do this combat-y stuff.
Right, you mark hit points, you make all the, you make the rolls, roll damage, decide powers, whatever. Or and I don't think this is a thing that we would wind up doing, but if we were playing something more complex, like a 5e or something, it might be like, cool, you take the spellcaster, I'll handle the well, you focus on the spellcaster because there's a lot more going on with the spellcaster. I'll handle the horde of orcs.
Yeah.
Like, the four groups of orcs or whatever.
Yeah, because they're just gonna run attack.
Okay.
Yeah.
So I think we don't have to define that one super well because you and I currently aren't playing games like that.
Yeah, I agree.
If we get to playing games like that, we'll refine this.
Yeah, we'll have to do it in more detail. It's good that we've touched on it, just in case anybody else is interested.
Yeah, because I do think that there's, I think that in combat there are certain efficiencies gained that if one person is running the table.
Yeah.
And the other person is running the opposition.
Right. It means that you're not both running the table and everyone else's turns, and then it comes to the bad guy's turn, and then you might be like, yikes, what are they going to do? Let me look up this power, blah, blah, blah. In the same way that a player should be prepping before it gets to them, you then have two people so that one person can be doing that, right? I'm
going to ask you one more Powered by the Apocalypse related question, and then we're going to close this section out, and we're going to have an episode 3.
Okay.
In a Powered by the Apocalypse game where we have, say, 4 players.
Yeah.
Do we want to have the lead narrator handle the narration for all of the players' combats? Or would we want to split that where it's like, cool, I'm going to take Bob and Chris. You're going to take Jerry and Eric.
Interesting.
Let me caveat that. Would that answer make a difference if they were in a completely different location or doing something different?
Yes, and that is exactly why I was like, interesting, right?
Okay.
Because if they're separated, then I think that's a time that you take advantage of having 2 GMs.
Perfect.
Right? And that's easy. Or even if they're in the same combat, but some people are engaged with this thing and some people are engaged with that thing, or these guys are trying to figure out the trap while these other people fight the giant statue. Cool. Those are easy lines that I see where we can split things, right?
I like that.
And then we have split descriptions and reactions and all of that kind of stuff. If all 4 people are all engaged in combat with the same objective, then I think it's trickier to split that up, but it might be something like if we feel like it's getting repetitive or something like split by rounds or I don't know. That's where it's a little more amorphous.
Yep. I'm okay with that. I'm okay because handoff is going to handle how we deal with spontaneous changing.
Yes.
Or spontaneous interjections.
Yeah.
And that is our topic for next week. So come back for one more episode and we'll talk about how we're going to perform handoffs, how we're going to switch back and forth during the game, and also how we're going to interject when we want to share something that we think is cool that should go into the game before the narrator gets past it or something.
Yeah.
And then we'll talk about a game or two where we think this might be a good idea. And with all of that said, Senda's going to tell us about another show on the Misdirected Mark Network, and then we're heading right into the closing.
It's true. On Bone, Stone, and Obsidian, Wayne and Robert take monthly deep dives into the Dark Sun setting and discuss it across all the editions of D&D.
Awesome.
No panties, though.
Man, that bit's never going away.
The bit that never dies.
Say, Senda, where do people reach us on the internet?
Well, you can find us on Twitter at Pandas Talk Games. You can find us in the Misdirected Mark forums. And you can drop us an email if you prefer, panda@misdirectedmark.com. And Phil, once they find us in one of those places, what can they do with that information?
Please, please, please send us your topics. While we're spending most of November talking about how we're going to co-GM, when the new year comes, we are definitely going to need new topics. Fresh, updated topics. So please, send us more topics. We love to do shows about the things that you find interesting. Send us questions. Send us suggestions. We'll find a way to make a show out of pretty much anything. And if you like what we do here or elsewhere on the Misdirected Mark Network, you can support our Patreon campaign. Go to patreon.com/MMP. Patrons get all manner of goodies, access to our Slack room for life, the bonus outtakes from this show, the after show from Misdirected Mark, the occasional giveaway, as we like to give away things to our patrons. and all that kind of stuff. We also like to do some patron shout-outs. I'm going to do the first shout-out.
Oh, yeah?
So this is first shout-out is to Richard Wyatt, captain of the Royal Airship Fleet, fellow Minecrafter, whose character is only slowly going insane as they dive deeper and deeper into the magic mod that we have in the game.
No, I'm pretty sure there's bath salts for that.
Bath salts, soaps, sanity soaps, and things like that.
Yeah. It's fine. It's only minor rifts in reality.
Correct.
The tabletop bellhop, Mo. Thank
Ding.
you so much. And the Closet Gamer. Good. This is the show of calling out the other shows, and I love you all. You're all great.
Yes, absolutely.
You should listen to all of them.
Mm-hmm. And talking about listening, if you are listening to us on an iDevice and wanted to make us super happy, what exactly could you do with Apple Podcast?
I was going to say you can blink a lot really hard. If you blink 5 times in a row, it gives us 5 stars. No, this joke is not going anywhere. No. You could leave us a rating or review on Apple Podcasts or the podcatcher of your choice. Every new review we get really does actually help new people find the show, which is super exciting. And then also sometimes we go back and read them, which is also super exciting. The only thing about that is it's really hard to track them all down. So if you leave them somewhere that's not the US Apple Podcast Store that is easily accessible to us, you should let us know so that we can track them down and see them. And thank you so very much to everyone who has already left a review. We really do appreciate them.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Indeed, we do.
Say, Phil, you didn't write a new question for this week. Was that part of the bit?
No, I didn't. No, it is part of the bit.
Show me what you got. 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 Show me what you got.
This show is a joint production of She's a Super Geek and Misdirected Mark Productions, the media arm of Encoded Designs.
Show me what you got. 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 Show me what you got.
Clicky. I realized by looking at the video of me in the little box that I am in need of a haircut. I'm getting to the part where I don't like my hair, but I'm getting to the part where I don't like the shape of my head. With my hair.
Oh. It's a little wild right now because you keep doing weird things with it, but
no, it's just, it's a thing, right? My hair is actually very wavy and curly because when I was younger, my hair was in ringlet curls.
Yeah.
And was blonde. Right?
Wow, you went full.
I was platinum blonde. In fact, my hair was so blonde when I was 2, I looked like I didn't have hair, right? Yeah. And then I was blonde all the way through middle school. And then one summer, it went from blonde to brown, and then it went from brown to black.
It's really interesting. I keep waiting for my son's hair to do that.
I was waiting for my kids too. I thought Rosie's was going to go, but I'm not 100% certain.
Right. I'm watching him. But I'm becoming less and less convinced. It's gotten darker. It's not platinum anymore, but it's sticking.
The other thing is that though, when I do get my hair cut, then my gray patch on the side becomes really visible.
I know. It's very distinguished.
It's I wanted the Mr. Fantastic sides to go gray, but I just I have the rogue streak.
You have the rogue streak, which is what I wanted. Give it back.
Yes. Anyway, I just was thinking about it because I'm ooh, the holidays are coming up. Oh, I hate my hair. I'm oh, maybe this weekend or sometime next week I need to make a quick run and get a haircut. Just quick cut. My haircut's simple.
Bloop. We haven't said anything funny yet, but I think we have to start the show anyway.
My hair is funny. That's funny content.
The way we're talking about it.
It's learning about Phil. Sit down, kids. It's time to learn about Phil. Just take that part and put it at the front.
At the front, and it will make
nonlinear
all the hair
podcasting.
stuff funny.
Yeah, wait. Ready? Gather around, kids. It's time to learn about one of your co-hosts. Let's talk about Phil's hair today.
Now we have to sing the hair song.
Hair, 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 hair. Phil's getting long hair. Is that the song?
I don't know. I
Yeah.
thought you were doing Three Blind Mice, but then you lost
I don't
me.
know what I was doing. I was just saying the word hair a bunch of times. Like, sure, chop this up into some like nonlinear order and make something funny out of it.
Nope.
Oh,
it's going in.
oh,
just
you know
as it
that's
is.
perfect. Just add your laugh to a couple different parts of it.
And then it will be
it'll
funny.
be
whether,
funny.
Whether anything you said was
Yeah,
funny
because
or
I'll just
not.
be talking about my hair, and then you just start laughing. I'll be like, yeah, I think I don't look right, and you'll be like, ha 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 ha. Ha. They'll never know. They'll never know.
Okay.
Did I get the funny in?
Yeah, I think you got the
All right,
funny.
you ready to go do this?
Yeah, let's do
All
the
right,
thing.
let's do it.
Did you did you leave it so that I still say hey? Oh yeah, I see.
Yeah, but you have to
I
do the
see.
meow first.
I know. I can't do the meow. I'm laughing at your meow face. Doing it again doesn't make me laugh less. Do it again.
I'm gonna freak everybody out in my house.
He's just shaking his head and looking at me. Okay. Bloop. Are you gonna meow again?
I mean, I just meowed like 12 times. You didn't even respond to one of them.
Okay. Meow.
Meow. Bloop. Do, 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 do.
I feel like there should be like some low text spoken extremely fast following that, like, do not read this book while you are operating a motor vehicle. Do not read it, like, or something. Like,
Oh, you can totally
but you
operate a
totally
motor
can.
vehicle.
No, I know, but like, I couldn't think of anything witty to insert.
Prepping games is hard. Ouch.
Ouch!
There
There's
must be
gotta
a better way.
way.
But books are hard to read. What about an audiobook?
If you like GMing, have I got the book for you?
This book's got everything. Heat maps, prep, reviews. Never unprepared.
Okay.
Show me what
I killed
you got.
the bit.
Show me what
I
you
killed
got.
the bit.
Show me
when
what you got.
asking you the question.
Show me what you got.
I didn't sing. Show me what you got.
47-ish?
Yeah, 47:11.
Then we are done. Hey, folks, we're going to get out of here because 47 is a bit on the long side. We give you a little more content and a little less stuff on the back end, although plenty about my hair in the beginning.
lots
But don't
about your
worry,
hair.
Senda's going to edit that up. It's going to be hilarious.
Hair, wonderful hair.
The funny part is you're not going to edit it up,
Lovely hair.
and so it'll be
wonderful
even
hair.
funnier.
You're right. I'm totally not going to edit it out.
I know you're totally not going to do
No,
that.
it's funny
So
that you
all right.
think I might.
No, it's funny that I say you are, but I totally know you won't.
It's a lot
right.
of work.
Are we ready to get out of here?
Yes. Good.
Okay, ready?
Goodbye.
Say goodbye. Bye.